Racist restaurant owner humiliates black couple, only to regret it when their true identity is revealed. Welcome to a tale of power, pride, and poetic justice, set in the heart of an upscale American city. This story unravels the deep-seated prejudices that can lurk beneath the surface of success and how courage and composure can turn the tide. Prepare to witness the journey of a seemingly untouchable restaurant owner and a determined couple who expose the cracks in his carefully curated world. This is a story about reckoning and redemption, told through 4 gripping chapters. James Caldwell, the esteemed owner of Le Paradis, stood near the entrance of his restaurant, his eyes scanning the elegant dining room with an air of satisfaction. Nestled in the affluent neighborhood of Upper Heights, Le Paradis was more than just a French fine dining establishment. It was a symbol of James's journey from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of success. With its opulent chandeliers, velvet curtains, and a menu curated by Michelin-starred chefs, Le Paradis catered to the city's elite, lawyers, politicians, and socialites alike. For James, maintaining the exclusivity of his restaurant was non-negotiable. His upbringing in a modest Midwestern town had instilled in him a deep hunger for refinement. A hunger he now channeled into every detail of his establishment. From the gold-trimmed tableware to the carefully vetted guest list, Le Paradis was a fortress of sophistication. James often said, "This isn't just dining. It's an experience for those who belong." That Friday evening, James's usual sense of control was interrupted. As he stood at his post, he noticed a couple approaching the restaurant. They were impeccably dressed, the man in a sleek navy suit and the woman in a flowing emerald gown. Despite their refined appearance, something about them unsettled James. Marcus and Angela Reed were black, and for James, their presence challenged his unspoken rules about who fit the image of Le Paradis. James greeted them with his trademark polished smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good evening," he said smoothly. "Do you have a reservation?" Marcus replied with a warm smile. "Yes, it's under Reed. We're celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary." The maitre d' confirmed the reservation, and James's stomach tightened. He forced a nod, gesturing him inside. "Right this way," he said, leading them through the dining room. As they passed the tables of predominantly white patrons, James felt the weight of scrutinizing glances. To appease his own unease, he directed the Reeds to a table tucked near the kitchen doors, a subtle way of signaling they were out of place. Angela noticed the placement but said nothing, squeezing Marcus's hand as they sat. "It's fine," she whispered. "We're here to celebrate us." Marcus nodded, his calm demeanor masking his frustration. This was supposed to be a night of joy, a milestone in their journey together, but the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken judgments. James, meanwhile, returned to his post, feeling an odd sense of accomplishment. He believed he had maintained the balance of his restaurant without causing a scene. Yet, he found himself glancing at the Reeds throughout the evening, hoping for some justification for his discomfort. But Marcus and Angela gave him none. They treated the staff with kindness, laughed softly over their shared memories, and carried themselves with the grace of people who knew they belonged anywhere. As the evening progressed, James's discomfort grew. He instructed the kitchen to delay their meals and watched for any sign of complaint. To his dismay, the Reeds remained patient, their composure unwavering. This infuriated James. He wasn't accustomed to being challenged, even silently, in his own domain. What James didn't know was that the Reeds had faced such subtle indignities before. As successful entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry, they had learned to navigate these situations with dignity. Tonight, however, they weren't just dining, They were observing, taking mental notes of every interaction. Angela leaned over to Marcus and whispered, "It's exactly what we thought." Marcus nodded, his eyes steady. "Let's finish dinner. We'll handle this our way." James continued to watch them, a sense of unease creeping into his thoughts. Despite his carefully curated facade, he couldn't shake the feeling that this couple, in their quiet confidence, were disrupting more than just his evening. He didn't realize it yet, but Marcus and Angela were about to challenge everything he believed about his world and his place within it. The next morning, James arrived at Le Paradis for his usual weekend routine. The restaurant was quiet, save for the hum of preparation in the kitchen. He prided himself on being hands-on, inspecting every detail before the first guests arrived. Today, however, his thoughts lingered on the previous evening. Despite his efforts to dismiss the Reeds as a minor anomaly, he couldn't ignore the unease their presence had stirred. James's discomfort deepened when he noticed a handwritten note left on his desk. It was from Angela, thanking him for the experience at Le Paradis and expressing hopes to return soon. The note was polite, even gracious, but James read it as a veiled critique. He stared at the paper, the neat cursive mocking his carefully cultivated control. Shaking off his frustration, James turned his attention back to the evening ahead. He instructed his maitre d' to ensure everything ran smoothly and to screen reservations more carefully. "No surprises," he said curtly, though the underlying message was clear. His unease had transformed into paranoia. Meanwhile, Marcus and Angela were in their downtown office suite, reviewing the detailed notes they'd taken from their evening at Le Paradis. Their hospitality consulting firm, Reed Ventures, had been scouting high-end restaurants for months, searching for the perfect acquisition. Le Paradis fit the bill in many ways: prestige, location, and untapped potential, but James's attitude had revealed the cracks beneath the polished exterior. "It's a beautiful space," Angela said, scrolling through pictures they had taken of the restaurant's interior. "But it's stuck in another era. The exclusivity isn't about luxury, it's about exclusion." Marcus nodded. "We can fix that. The question is, how do we approach it without tipping him off?" Their strategy was deliberate. They would leverage their network to gather more information about Le Paradis and James himself. They had no intention of confronting him directly, not yet. Instead, they planned to let their actions speak louder than words. Back at the restaurant, James was oblivious to the Reeds' plans. His focus was on maintaining the status quo, though he couldn't shake the lingering tension. That evening, as the dining room filled with patrons, James found himself scrutinizing every detail, searching for anything that felt out of place. His perfectionism bordered on obsession, and the staff began to notice his growing irritability. "What's gotten into him?" one waiter whispered to another as James berated a busboy for a slightly wrinkled tablecloth. "He's been like this all day." James overheard the remark and felt a surge of anger. He prided himself on his reputation as a meticulous but fair employer. Yet, the tension brewing within him was beginning to spill over, fracturing the carefully maintained image he had spent years constructing. Unbeknownst to James, the Reeds were quietly moving their plan forward. They had contacted a mutual acquaintance, a prominent food critic known for her incisive reviews. Within days, she had scheduled a visit to Le Paradis. Her opinion carried weight in the culinary world, and the Reeds suspected it might provide the catalyst they needed. James, still unaware of the impending scrutiny, clung to his belief that he could control every aspect of his restaurant. But the cracks in his facade were widening, and the Reeds were ready to exploit them. The stage was set for a confrontation that would force James to confront not only his biases but the very foundation of his success. The following week brought a wave of activity to Le Paradis. James was informed of the food critic's visit 2 days in advance, which sent him into overdrive. Every detail, from the floral arrangements to the placement of silverware, was scrutinized to perfection. James knew the power of a positive review, or the damage of a negative one, and he was determined to ensure the critic saw only the best side of his restaurant. However, beneath the flurry of preparations, James's anxiety lingered. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Reeds' visit had set something in motion, though he couldn't yet articulate what. His staff tiptoed around him, wary of his heightened irritability. To them, it seemed as though James was fighting an invisible battle, one he refused to acknowledge even to himself. When the critic, Elaine St. Clair, arrived on a busy Thursday evening, the entire staff was on edge. James greeted her personally, his demeanor polished and professional. Elaine was known for her discerning palate and sharp observations, and James was determined to leave nothing to chance. Elaine's table was given prime placement, near the window with a view of the city skyline. The menu had been subtly adjusted to highlight the restaurant's most exquisite dishes. James watched from a distance as Elaine sampled each course, her expression inscrutable. Despite his outward calm, his nerves were fraying with each passing moment. What James didn't know was that Elaine had already been briefed about the Reeds' experience. Marcus and Angela had reached out to her with a detailed account of their visit, framing it as part of a larger trend in fine dining. Elaine, intrigued by their perspective, had decided to use her review not just to evaluate the food but to probe deeper into the culture of Le Paradis. As the evening progressed, Elaine observed more than just the cuisine. She noticed the subtle dynamics among the staff, the way certain patrons were given preferential treatment, and the unspoken tension that seemed to permeate the air. By the time her meal concluded, she had formed a clear picture of Le Paradis, a restaurant that excelled in surface-level refinement but struggled with deeper issues of inclusivity and authenticity. The next morning, James received an advance copy of Elaine's review. His hands trembled as he read her words. While she praised the food and ambience, she also highlighted the exclusivity that defined Le Paradis, and not in a flattering way. Elaine's critique was pointed but fair, calling out the restaurant's reliance on outdated notions of prestige and its failure to embrace a more diverse clientele. James felt a surge of indignation. He dismissed Elaine's observations as misguided, refusing to acknowledge the validity of her points. Yet, as the review circulated online, the response from the public was overwhelmingly supportive of Elaine's perspective. Customers began to question the values behind Le Paradis, and reservations started to decline. Meanwhile, Marcus and Angela saw the review as a turning point. They knew James's pride would prevent him from addressing the criticism directly, which left the restaurant vulnerable. It was time to make their move. With the help of their legal team, they drafted a formal proposal to acquire Le Paradis, framing it as an opportunity for James to step away gracefully while preserving the restaurant's legacy. When James received the proposal, his initial reaction was fury. The audacity of the Reeds, he thought, to offer him a way out of his own creation. Yet, as the days passed and the financial strain became more apparent, James was forced to confront a painful truth. His vision for Le Paradis no longer aligned with the world around him. The very values he had clung to were now his greatest liability. James sat in his office at Le Paradis, staring at the proposal Marcus and Angela had sent. The terms were clear: a lucrative buyout that would allow James to retire comfortably but required his complete departure from the restaurant. There would be no public acknowledgement of his past leadership, no lingering influence over operations. For all intents and purposes, James would be erased from the legacy of Le Paradis. His initial instinct was to reject the offer outright. This restaurant was his life's work, a reflection of his ambition and vision. Yet, the reality was unavoidable. Elaine's review had done lasting damage. Reservations were down, regular patrons were cancelling, and whispers about the restaurant's exclusivity had turned into a full-blown narrative. Across town, Marcus and Angela reviewed the final stages of their acquisition plan. They had already begun reimagining what Le Paradis could become, a space that celebrated inclusivity and excellence without the barriers that had defined it under James's ownership. This isn't just about changing a restaurant, Angela said. It's about setting a new standard for what fine dining should represent. The final meeting was scheduled for the following week. James arrived at the law office feeling a mixture of resentment and resignation. He had agreed to the terms, but the bitterness lingered. Marcus and Angela greeted him with the same calm professionalism they had displayed during their first visit to the restaurant. "Thank you for meeting with us," Marcus said, extending a hand. The negotiations were brief. James signed the papers in silence, his pen leaving an indelible mark on the page. When it was done, Marcus handed him a folder containing the final agreement. "We'll take good care of Le Paradis," he said. "Its future is in good hands." James forced a nod, unable to muster any words. As he left the office, he felt a strange emptiness. The restaurant that had defined his life for decades was no longer his. It was a loss he had not yet begun to process. Under Marcus and Angela's leadership, Le Paradis underwent a transformation. The decor was updated to reflect a modern, welcoming aesthetic. The menu expanded to include dishes inspired by diverse cuisines, and the staff was retrained to prioritize hospitality and inclusivity. Within months, the restaurant's reputation rebounded. Critics praised the changes, and a new, diverse clientele filled the dining room every night. James, meanwhile, struggled to adjust to his new reality. He watched from the sidelines as the restaurant he had built thrived in ways he had never imagined. The pride he once felt was replaced by a lingering regret, not just for losing Le Paradis but for the choices that had brought him to this point. For Marcus and Angela, the success of Le Paradis was more than just a business triumph. It was a validation of their vision and a reminder that change was possible. Even in the most entrenched spaces, they had turned a symbol of exclusion into a beacon of inclusivity, proving that excellence and equity could coexist. The story of Le Paradis is more than a tale of transformation. It's a reminder that change begins when we confront our biases and embrace a broader vision of what success and community can look like. Marcus and Angela Reed not only turned a symbol of exclusion into a space of warmth and inclusivity but also proved that dignity and resilience can triumph over prejudice. For James Caldwell, his journey serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of clinging to outdated beliefs in a world that is moving toward diversity and equality. His fall from grace teaches us that true success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about how we treat others and the legacy we leave behind. As we close this chapter, we encourage you to reflect on the lessons of this story. Remember that the strength of a community lies in its ability to welcome and uplift everyone, regardless of their background or appearance. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more powerful, thought-provoking tales, make sure to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss an update and can join us in exploring new stories that inspire, challenge, and entertain. Click the subscribe button now, it's free and only takes a second. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new story drops. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you next time with another unforgettable story.